Well, hello everybody. It's time to start preserving some of the harvest, I guess. I already made some jams and whatever, but in this video we make a short visit out to the hoop house to pick some hot chili peppers, and then I found a very simple recipe online for making pickled hot peppers. And so I'm going to make a batch of pickled hot peppers. And to conclude this little thing, something interesting is happening with my Asian pear tree and my solitary bee house, mason bee house, whatever, that's on the side of the cabin. The pear tree is quite close to it. I think you'll find quite interesting what I've discovered that's happening out there. So I think I've managed to keep this video at around 10 minutes, which is very unusual for me. Well, I'm not sure what this is. Well, I know what it is actually. It's a tomato plant, but I'm not sure what the variety is. It's a feral tomato plant that's come up over next to the pepper plants here, right in the hard ground where I walk, just at the edge of the path. So I assume it must be some variety that I've grown in here in the past. It's just starting to set some, so far, very tiny tomatoes on a tiny little truss. Interested to see later on what they might be like. Well, there are enough ripe red peppers. This variety is the Big Balm, hot cherry pepper. I don't find it terribly hot, but it certainly is hot. I leave the seeds in because it isn't as hot as like the cayenne or the Thai chilies that I'm growing. But I'm going to try pickling some peppers. Probably a mixture of red ones that are ripe and a few green ones as well. Found a very simple hot pepper pickling recipe on the internet. I'll give you a little look at how I do that process. It'll have to be a mixture, I guess, of ripe and green. There weren't enough red ones. Not as many as I thought there were there. And for some reason, the newer ones that have just started to come on, the green ones, are much larger than the older ones that have ripened and gone red. Some of the very first of the ones that ripened were quite small. They've been on there for quite a while. They're really quite soft. I probably won't slice these small ones. I'll just pierce them a couple of times so that the vinegar can get inside. And as I said, it's a simple recipe. Other than the peppers, the only vegetable required is some garlic. So I've been to the loft in the cabin and got one of my heads of garlic. Other than that, it's vinegar and water, salt, and optional sugar. And I'll add a little of the optional sugar, I guess. Anyway, I'll show you the process as it progresses here. The recipe is supposed to make 3 pint jars, 500 milliliter jars. Possibly I've picked too many peppers. Usually I don't pick enough. I don't know. Anyway, it's 3 cups of white vinegar and 2 cups of water. The vinegar is already in there, and that was the last cup of water. And then 3 cloves of garlic, not chopped, but just sort of crushed a bit. Crushed that more than a bit, I guess. A piece of it went on the floor. And you bring that to a boil while the jars are sterilizing and slicing up the peppers first. Well, I bought a brand new pair of marigolds just for the occasion. I won't use them for anything else. I'm going to be hopefully making some hot pepper relish and hot pepper jelly. This size, as I guess I already said, I only intend to pierce it rather than slice it. So I'll hang on to my marigolds here and continue using them until I finish canning anyway, before I use them for anything else. Trust me, you do not want to get your hands near your eyes after having sliced hot peppers. Well, I won't make you watch me do this entire thing. I'll slice a couple here. As I said, I guess earlier when I was harvesting these, I'm going to leave the seeds in. Without the seeds, this particular variety I don't find all that hot. canned seeds and all. And there are lots of seeds in these. And I think the earlier ones that I used had this many seeds. Well, you don't have to watch me do all that. I'll come back and show you what it looks like when I've got all of them sliced up here. Well, there's only supposed to be brine enough for 3-pint jars, so 3-pint jars is what I'm going to be making, I guess. I suspect there may be some left over here, although you jam as much as you can jam into a jar. Looks to me I probably got enough here for 6 jars, which wouldn't be difficult to do. I guess the brine is quite easy to make, so. But you put as much as you can possibly put into a jar, because in the canning process it will shrink no matter how much I jam in. It always seems to me if I end up with whatever I've been canning, pickles or peppers or whatever, I'm always floating up from the bottom. Anyway, that's 1 jar done. I won't make you watch me do all 3. We'll come back in a few minutes here. I don't think that I said, but the instructions are to bring the brine to a boil and then reduce the heat and simmer for 5 minutes with the garlic cloves in there. There's enough brine left over, I think, to make a 4th jar, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm sterilizing a 4th jar now. Into each one of these I put a ½ teaspoon of pickling salt. That's any salt that's not iodized. And I put a ½ teaspoon of sugar. The recipe called for a teaspoon of salt in a 500 milliliter pint jar, but I had a bad experience with doing my canned beans last year. It was supposed to be a ½ teaspoon of salt in the pint jar, and I misread the instructions and did what you would do for a quart jar. I put a teaspoon in and thinking, well, it probably won't be too bad. They were very salt, so I don't like that much salt, so I've halved the amount of salt. The preservative here is the vinegar anyway, I think. I don't think the salt is that important, but I'm waiting to get the 4th jar, and then once that's done, they go in the hot water bath canner for 10 minutes once the canner returns to the boil. And I'll show you what my 4 jars look like when I get them out of there. I'm sure the color won't be as vibrant as it is here. That's always the unfortunate part about canning things. It dulls the color down quite a bit, but we'll see what they look like shortly. Enough to do the 4th jar, as you can see, and very little left over, just a few extra slices. So what was supposed to make 3 pints made 4, and the color is as I thought it would be, a little duller. Now comes the hard part, waiting a few weeks for them to finish marinating and pickling or whatever, so I can give them a try and see how hot they are. But lots of seeds in there, so I expect they'll be fairly spicy. That is my mason bee house, which I guess would be better called a solitary bee house. You notice that bee that just went in the hole? That was a leaf cutter bee, and she had a piece of leaf with her. So I'm now going to show you where she's getting her leaves. Now this is the Asian pear, the grafted Asian pear that I showed in my last video, and I said at that time there was some insect damage, but the insect damage has been getting a little bit worse lately. You can see that nice scallop cut out of here. That's what a leaf cutter bee does, and they do it remarkably fast. I wish I could get a clip of them doing it, but I've watched them coming back to their little chamber in the solitary bee house there, and they're only gone for a couple of minutes and they come back with a new piece of leaf. But they seem to be doing it just to the newer tender leaves, so I don't think they'll completely kill the thing. The older leaves that are tougher, they don't seem to be bothering those. Leaf cutter bee at work on my Asian pear tree. Just about to move on and film something else, probably in the hoop house, when I noticed this leaf directly below the bee house there. This is the grapevine, the wild native grapevine. I didn't go very far to get that section, a few inches down below the bee house.